I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO. I saw work ethic. I didn't have to be taught work ethic. I saw it firsthand, and it had a big impression on me. Most of the time that I was a young man, he was working 3 jobs. He was a barber, a janitor, and a chauffeur. I've never shied away from hard work, never shied away from, any sort of challenge or anything like that, because that was my dad's attitude. Whatever the challenge, figure out a way to make it work. We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last. Put in an economic growth plan called 999. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I don't know what it means.
999.
Okay, I find Herman to be an outstanding person, a truly outstanding individual.
Our lunch consisted of whatever my mother could scrape together from the dinner the night before. We would have sandwiches with no meat.
What are people who are in need the most are?
You're listening to the Exploration Films podcast, Stories of Consequence. A deep dive into films from around the world. Conversations with producers, directors, and actors, where they discuss the behind-the-scenes stories of filmmaking and also reflect on their motivations and their worldview as storytellers.
Welcome to the Exploration Films podcast. I'm your producer and host, Steve Ryder. Today's film we're featuring is From Poor to CEO, the Herman Cain story. Many of you will remember the late Herman Cain, former corporate executive, CEO of Godfathers Pizza, and then from his presidential run. Barry Tolli had the privilege of documenting Herman's life before he passed. I not only talked with Barry about this film, but I also talked to Herman's daughter, Melanie Cain Gallo. Dr. Melanie Gallo, thanks for being on the Exploration Films podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now, my story, I worked 15 years for Dr. James Dobson. I was his chief audio engineer at Focus on the Family, and then the second employee he hired to help build Family Talk. And I remember when your dad was running for president.
Okay.
And I remember Dr. Dobson mentioning that he had a meeting with your dad, and he came away super impressed.
Wow.
He really liked your dad. And so that immediately was like, I loved the way that he presented himself and just his sense of humor, his levity, his smile.
Right.
It was a breath of fresh air at the time,
right,
politically.
Right. Yeah, he definitely wasn't the typical politician.
What I love about this film is that it puts some flesh on those bones for those of us that really only saw him on the news and saw snippets of him and maybe would see a speech, here, parts of a speech here and there, and just read what the newspapers said. I had no idea that your dad came from he would reference it in the speeches, but I had no idea he came from the background that he did of just deep, deep poverty.
Yeah. And like you said, he talked about it all the time, but without having, a lot of people say that, not saying that they don't, but you don't have a visual of what that means, because it can mean different things to different people. And so, yeah, the movie he literally takes you back to where he grew up, and he literally shows you the church that he grew up in and was married in, and that I ended up joining and was married in, so it is kind of something to kind of put a visual to his background. My grandfather, he'll talk about it in the movie. My grandfather held 3 jobs. My grandmother was a domestic worker, and that's how he grew up. And it was in the 60s and the 50s and 60s in the South. So yeah, it does put somewhat of a clearer picture on what that was actually like when you're able to actually see it in the film.
Where did the idea for this film come from?
My understanding is that Barry, the director, the filmmaker, I mean, he directed, I mean, Barry did everything. He does it all. I think it was his idea because when he met Dad and they worked together on some other things, I guess he was telling him about, you know, his background. And after spending more and more time with him, I guess Barry just got more and more interested. And he, being a filmmaker, he was like, we should make a movie. Like, we really need to make a film about your life. And of course, my dad, being how he was, yes, we need a movie about me, you know. That's exactly. So, you know, he wasn't going to turn that down. But the way that it could have went in so many other directions, but it was so great the way that they just told the story. And like I said, the way they filmed it, it was great. It is great.
This is my old neighborhood. I called it the half a house. Mm-hmm. And we stayed on the right side of this half a house. I remember that driveway there. We could go out the back door, come down that driveway. That's how my brother broke all of our bikes. Riding up and down this alley.
Talk about who your dad was. Who was he as a dad? And how did the family and his inner circle of friends view him?
He was very spiritual. So God always was first. And he was very, you know, he was Dad. He wanted to know, you know, what homework are you working on? Why'd you get that C? You know, like the typical present dad, you know, he was there for dinners. Now, when I was probably more like high school age, middle school, high school, professionally, he was traveling a lot because he was in corporate America. And so his jobs required him to be gone a lot. I mean, he would be back home on weekends. He would take me to choir rehearsal and my brother to choir rehearsal for the youth choir on Saturdays. And at one point they didn't have a director. So he became the choir director because he's got an extensive musical background too, that a lot of people don't know about. He sang in the Morehouse Glee Club when he was in college. He was the drum major for the Morehouse marching band. He played the trombone, but he was the drum major for a couple years. He sang. He used to sing at weddings all the time. And before he became a minister, he was kind of not known for singing, but like in our family and in our religious circles and things like that, friends, he sang. He was in Omaha, the pizza guy that sang. He would do benefit concerts for a youth development center in Omaha that would raise thousands of dollars. And so growing up, he was, you know, the musical dad, the church-going dad, and the dad that, you know, was very serious about us doing well in school and, you know, that kind of thing. And super funny, of course. What you saw on TV is exactly how he was with us too.
Really?
Yeah.
What's one story in particular that you can look back that really you hold close to your heart about your dad's sense of humor?
Probably so many. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint. I mean, it would just be everyday type things. Like, really? I might come home and there would be on my bedroom door a bumper sticker that he stuck there that said, "Is that your face or did your neck throw up?" Like, who does that? So I'm like a teenager and I'm walking in my room and I'm like, oh, really? You know, it was just those kind of things. I mean, you couldn't help but laugh because I pretty much have the same sense of humor, but he just loved to laugh. And
did he love to embarrass you as a teenager?
He did not. Really? He did not try to embarrass me. He didn't do that.
But you would just naturally get embarrassed as a teenager?
I didn't get embarrassed. I really didn't get embarrassed because, again, I think we kind of I wasn't as outgoing, like in terms of standing in front of people and speaking and all those kinds of things. But in terms of like our senses of humor, and I wasn't easily embarrassed just in general, like if he was acting like himself, because as far as I was concerned, that's him. He's the one acting like that. He's the one shouting out. I'd be in marching band, and he and my mom and my brother would be running alongside the band, yelling my name while we're trying to march down the road and play. It was stuff like that. That was just, you couldn't help but laugh. And we were very close because we didn't ever really live around family. All of our family was in Georgia, and with his jobs, we moved around a lot. And so we were always very close knit, the four of us. And we had like a great friend support system and a friend network in other states, but we were always really close and really supportive of each other.
In the film, your mom talks about he always had big dreams, always had big dreams. What were some of his dreams that he pursued and accomplished? And what do you remember any dreams that he didn't accomplish?
I really can't think of anything that he did not accomplish outside of the fact that his life was cut short. People wouldn't necessarily say it was short because he was 75, but he was in good health. And so that, relatively speaking, was unexpected. Like he wasn't anticipating that happening. So outside of that, he reached every goal that I remember him ever talking about. He would come home and you never know what he was going to come up with next. I remember when we were here in Georgia at one point, or I can't remember where we were living, but he came home one day and was like, we're moving to Omaha. And we were like, what's in Omaha? What's that? Omaha, Nebraska. And we're thinking, oh gosh, what next? And so then he decided he was going to run for the Senate. I'm running for the United States Senate. And we were thinking, where did that come from? And then he decided, he was going to, and it made sense in terms of looking back, it made sense in terms of the things that he had done, working with the Restaurant Association and having that interaction with things going on in DC. But
what year was that? What time?
He ran for the Senate. I feel like it was like 2004, 2003, 2004. I'm not quite sure when that race was, but it was around that time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he one day announced, I'm running for president of the United States. So we used to joke that he was going to come home one day and be like, I'm going to the moon. And we figured he'd just figure out a way to get to the moon. You never really knew.
Follow your dreams is what I would tell you. And dreams consist of a series of goals that you can identify, that you're going to achieve those goals. Don't ever think that every goal you achieve is going to get you to your dream, because there's a distance between your dreams and your goal that you can make happen. The distance between the highest goal that you have in your head and your long-term dream, only God knows the answer.
What was that like as a family, starting that journey running for the president of the United States? And really getting the kind of traction that he did early on by leading in a national poll and, having this target on his back from the establishment.
It was overwhelming. It was a little scary because remember, he had run for the United States Senate, but that was the extent of his political career. We weren't a political family, so to speak, so we didn't know what to expect. It was definitely overwhelming, I guess, considering the scale and the magnitude of it all. Like I said, it got to be a little scary. You have all these things. You've got, Secret Service around, and you've got other security, and then you've got people calling with threats, and it was just
really
unexpected. Yeah. We just weren't expecting it because we hadn't been there before, and we weren't used to that world, so to speak. So, but we were supportive. He was excited, so we were supportive of him. But yeah, it was definitely a lifestyle change for quite a while.
One of my favorite parts of the movie is when your mom is talking about how your dad pursued her for a year before she even reciprocated any kind of one. I was like, dang.
Right.
He's I mean, nowadays people, oh, he's a stalker.
Right.
You know.
Right. But you got to, back then there was no internet, there was no social media, there was no, cell phone. So he was only going to be able to connect with her so much once he saw her here and there. And yeah, she just said, he just talked too much.
That was my favorite line from the film. Why doesn't he shut up?
Right. Is he still talking? Yes. That's funny. And sometimes she still said it, over the years.
Every time I looked up, he was on my campus. It's like, why is he here? I actually avoided him for a whole year. I just did not like him.
What was it? The film kind of touches on it a little bit, but what was it that ultimately shifted your mom's view of your dad?
She saw that he was a really good guy. I mean, she saw that he had a big heart. He wasn't, playing games and trying to be sneaky and all of that kind of stuff. He was a really good guy. And they actually had a lot that they had in common in terms of their upbringings and, growing up in Atlanta. And so I remember her saying when they did finally have a conversation on the phone, they talked for a long time because they just had so much that they could talk about.
What kind of marriage did your parents have?
Very loving, very supportive of each other. Obviously with dad and, doing all of his different career changes and things. My mom was always there when it was time to move, she was always there to, get us situated and make sure that we were taken care of and felt comfortable in our new surroundings and our new schools and, but then on the flip side, with all of the stuff that she had to do in order to basically run things because he was working and, doing what he was so good at. But when he was around, he was very attentive and, it was always my wife, Gloria. And he just loved her and adored her so much that you could just tell they had a real partnership, not just a marriage, but like a true partnership. I mean, they would, they were married. So just like in any of us that are married, you've got times when you're not going to always agree, but they were really good at talking things through and agreeing to disagree and that kind of thing. And that's where I've learned that from. And so, yeah, it was really just great to see that growing up.
Marriage works, folks. But there are a few keys to making it work. One, don't try to change somebody. How many times have you heard the statement, after we get married, I'm going to change him? No, you're not. After we get married, I'm going to change her. No, you're not. Know who you're marrying in the first place.
What drove your dad to leave this position as a VP at Pillsbury to go to Burger King? Because when it was set up in the film, I thought, oh, so Burger King's bringing him on as, a VP or something, but he has to start from the ground floor. No, he went to Burger King on the ground floor without any promise whatsoever of moving up, right?
It was something like that. And I was in middle school at the time, so I'm not sure of the exact details of it. But my understanding is, yes, he had to start at the bottom and learn everything. It may have been part of a program, but in the program, you weren't guaranteed to remain in that program. So you had to produce and succeed. And, it wasn't like, here, you're vice president. Now just over the next year, just learn this stuff. No, it was like, if you didn't produce and perform, my understanding is it wasn't necessarily guaranteed, but yeah, he was always looking to do more, be able to impact more people, be able to help more people. And I mean, his original dream was to make, I think, $10,000 a year working at a job. That was his dream. It sounds crazy now, but I think it was back then. It was like he wanted to make $10,000 a year. So when he got to that point, from there, it was like he was going to reach for everything that he could reach for. Like he was going to try to take advantage of every opportunity that, came in front of him and go after all those opportunities that he saw that he never actually thought originally, he would have even had the chance to go after. So yeah, he just would always just go for it,
I also started out as a mathematician, as a GS7 ballistics analyst, working on fire control systems. We figured out how to make bombs and bullets hit targets more accurately. That was my job. I'd been getting an outstanding performance every quarter for 3 straight years. But then there was another guy who started at the same time I did, and he got outstanding performance every year while he was there. After the 3rd year, he got promoted 6 months ahead of me. So I went to my boss and I said, why is it that Robert gets promoted 6 months earlier than me? And he said to me, Robert has a master's degree. You don't. So you know what I did? I didn't get mad. I went and got me a master's degree from one of the toughest schools in the nation, Purdue University. Went back after I finished my master's and went to my boss's office and said, okay, when's the next opening for a promotion? And I got it.
What year did your dad get cancer?
Maybe 2012-ish,
Really?
maybe. It's kind of a blur.
Yeah.
But it was after he had run for the Senate. I feel like it was after that. Maybe around 2009, 2012, something like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I have seen is that, and I've read studies about this, often your mindset when you get cancer influences whether you're going to beat it or not. And there are a number of times where that a positive mindset, it still doesn't turn out well. But the way in which your dad seemed to have approached it, looking back, he said he approached it with this positive mindset. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to beat it. And were there ever times where, he was down and it really kind of got to him, or did he have that optimistic outlook throughout it?
He had it throughout it. Of course, when he first found out, my mom has talked about how he did have those moments where he was just, it's scary. It's a scary thing. And I believe maybe the doctor who originally told him they were very kind of abrupt in the way that they told them and that kind of thing. So that was kind of jarring in itself. And so I think at that time, he likely experienced, those emotions of feeling down and scared and maybe not even as optimistic. But once he got a second opinion, and just like he would approach work, projects, any type of challenge that he would come up against, he started gathering more information, figuring out, okay, what are some possible solutions? How do I solve this problem? And once he started getting more positive information, statistics on what are the success rates and, those types of things, that switch came back on that he normally has, where he's just, okay, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to beat it. And I 100% believe what you said about mindset goes into your health and your healing so much. I mean, it's a huge part of having, obviously, the medical part, things are going to kind of be how they are. And sometimes, regardless of how positive you are, it may not always work out the way that you plan. But I truly believe that mindset had a great deal to do with, and faith, above all, his faith. That had a great deal to do with how successful his recovery was.
Eventually getting to MD Anderson for him to have the surgery. That was a scary time, but he still had a strong faith.
And I said, oh, by the way, I like to know people's names. What is your name? She said, Grace. Is it the same Grace that they have in the song Amazing Grace? Grace? She said, yes. I had tumors in 80%. So he said, we're going to do a special procedure such that the good 20% can grow up to 30%. Portal vein embolization, I never heard of it. And then a month later, the good liver was 30% of my liver instead of 20%. He says, now I can operate. He said, I'm going to do an incision starting at your sternum. And he stuck his finger right here. And I'm going to do an incision down in the shape of a J. You mean the same J that's in Jesus? He said, yes. I said, Doc, let me get this straight. I started with Dr. Lloyd. I met a lady named Lady Grace. And now you're gonna do a J cut? The cancer has not come back. Before all of that, I had a 30% chance of survival. And I'm living to tell about it.
Where did that come from? I mean, were his parents optimistic like that? Did they pass that on to him?
They were, especially my grandfather.
Really?
We called him Big Daddy.
What was Big Daddy like? What kind of human was he?
He had the same type of personality as my
Really?
dad.
Really?
He got that from him. He was a people person. You know, he was fun and loved to laugh and loved to help and very driven to provide for his family and work and do things to try to make his children's futures better. But he had the same type personality, same, you know, people loved him. People really loved him.
Well, in the film, it mentioned he was the valet, like the personal assistant to the CEO of Coca-Cola.
Yes, he was. And I don't know how many years, but it was several. I mean, that's all I really remember in terms of my memories of him working. Mr. Woodruff was who, you know, he was the personal valet for Robert Woodruff. And so he would go everywhere with him. He would, go with him when he would go on vacations and travel with him when he would go just everywhere. And then there was a while where my grandmother was a domestic working at the Woodruff home. So they both were surrounded by these huge, things. And I think that is one of the things that not only caused my grandfather to always say, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure my children have every opportunity that they can have. And then that in turn is where my dad got that from his parents.
Did your dad have big dreams growing up? Or is that something that he talked about kind of developed over the years as he went to college? And
I think he did have big dreams. I was actually talking to a cousin of his very recently who was around the same age, and they knew, they played together as little children. And she said she remembers him always talking about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to be successful. And so it sounds like he always kind of thought that way and did what he could. Now, he might not have known exactly what he was going to do or how he was going to do it, but he just knew that he wanted to do something. And so that underlying determination, along with guidance from like his high school math teacher, he talks about, his name was Mr. Johnson. He's the one that suggested my dad major in math. And of course, the rest is history. He went on and had a career as a mathematician and that type of thing, but he wasn't quite sure, I don't think, what he wanted to do, but he just knew he was going to be great at something.
One of my heroes, role models, whatever term you want to use, Mr. Johnson was my high school math teacher. And he encouraged me to go to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. I said, well, if I go to college, what am I going to major in? He said, major in math. I said, why? He said, it'll train your mind for anything you want to do in the future. He had this southern drawl, Herman Cain. You can be anything you want to be. You just might have to work a little harder, and you might have to work a little longer. He was right. Mr. Johnson's words echoed in my brain forever. Whenever I was in a situation that seemed to have gotten tough, I heard those words. You might have to work a little harder, and you might have to work a little longer. So I worked a little harder, and I worked a little longer in every job I ever had because of Mr. Johnson's inspiration.
Did he ever tell you that growing up, that story about Mr. Johnson and that quote?
Yeah, he did. He told
Really?
us stories about, he didn't necessarily tell us in the southern draw. It was more like, you better get those grades up because you're going to be able to do whatever you want, but you can't get them with these kind, that kind of, more in his own types of, words. But they taught both my mom and my dad. That's what they taught us. You can go for whatever you want, but you're just going to have to work hard to get there. And it might take you longer. You might have to work longer to get there, but you can do whatever you want to do.
And what did you want to do growing up?
I don't remember what I wanted to do before my junior, senior in high school. But once I was in high school and took Psychology 101, I knew I wanted to do something in psychology. Yeah. I just fell in love with it. So I did go on to major in psychology in college and got my degree in that. But then after that, I was thinking, I need to go get a job. So I just, I didn't continue on with school at that time. And I just worked in the hotel industry. That's where my early career was. Mm-hmm. And got a lot of experience in different hotel organizations and other companies doing other things. And then I circled back around many years later and revisited the idea at the suggestion of my husband, really, because I had thought that it was too late for me to go back to school. I was too old. I can't go back and my dream was to have a PhD in psychology. And I was telling him about that one day and he said, why can't you? You're still here. Why can't you? So from there, I just kind of ran with it. And so that's what I ended up doing. So technically, this is kind of what I've always wanted to do. It just took me a little longer to get there. And I just had to work a little harder
and work a little longer.
But I eventually got there.
How old were you when you went back to school?
Well, I did go back and get a master's, but that wasn't my passion. So when I went back to get my PhD in psychology, I believe I was 30 something. I was 30 something, maybe 40, something like that.
And what are you doing now with that degree?
I'm a business psychology coach and consultant. So I help individuals and teams my specialization is thinking habits and personality and behavior within the workplace. And so I help people to better understand themselves and each other, basically, so that they can work more productively, more efficiently, so they can experience more harmony within their work lives and be more productive.
I would assume those years in the hotel industry and working in those teams have influenced your view, as opposed to if you had gone straight to get your PhD.
Definitely.
You wouldn't be able to lean back on that experience to be able to influence what you're doing now.
Definitely. And it was a blessing. And I believe things happen in the way that they're supposed to, because I really wasn't interested in being in a clinical setting.
Really?
But that's all I really knew. As a senior in high school, that's really the only aspect of psychology that I knew. And even once I graduated from college, I pretty much only knew about the clinical side of psychology.
Is that why you didn't pursue it then?
Yes, pretty much. I really wasn't sure if that's what I still loved it, but I didn't feel like being in a clinical area would have been a good fit for me. But then years later, I discovered business psychology, and I always loved the workplace. And, you know, I mean, I grew up in a house where
Corporate
my dad was
America.
a businessman. So I loved that environment. So when I discovered, and I was always trying to do those things, get people on teams to, you know, work better together. And I was trying to do that, but, you know, I was kind of just going off of instinct at that point. So the fact that I could go back and actually study it and write and research and, you know, turn that into my actual career, it's definitely where I was supposed to be. Yeah.
How proud of you was your dad?
Well, they say he was very proud. He would tell me, but he was funny because he wouldn't just come out and say, I'm proud of you. He would, of course, make a joke out of it. And he'd say, you went back to school? I can't believe you went back to school. You got another degree? I couldn't get you to get that first degree without, you know. So he would smile and laugh, and he was there when I graduated. And so, yeah, he was very supportive. He was very supportive and proud.
Mr. Cain, you've faced a lot of challenges in your life, personal, professional, political, some health-related, perhaps some race-related challenges. What advice would you give, especially to the young people here in the audience, on constructively facing challenges like that?
Stick with your faith if you have it, and if you don't have a faith, get one.
How huge is it for you and the family to have this film to be able to look back on now that your dad's gone?
Huge. I mean, it's very huge. It's not only because the timing is still, again, had to have been a God thing, because during that period of time that he was making the movie and, you know, they were filming and he was traveling here and there to, you know, revisit a place where he grew up and those kinds of things. He was so passionate and determined about that. It was like he was living and breathing that film. And at the time we were thinking, what, you know, you just really want this movie about yourself. You just got to have this movie about yourself. They're going to make a movie about me, you know? And so,
in only a way a family can do it.
Right.
Trying to knock him down a couple pegs.
Right. That was our job.
Come on. Seriously?
That was our job. But the fact that he did it up so big with the premieres and he wanted it to be black tie and just really special. And looking back, it's like, wow, we hadn't had all of our friends and family in the same place like that in, you know, I can't even remember how long. And so the fact that happened while he was here, and then we were able he memorialized his story in that. I mean, it's the greatest gift. I mean, and again, I credit Barry with his vision for what the movie could be and has become and how it turned out because of his storytelling ability and just his, you know, his ability to put that all together in the way that it came together.
What lessons can we take from your dad's life?
I think the bottom line is, you know, first, faith and family always come first. They always come first. And then his work ethic was, he lived it. He didn't just talk the talk, but he walked the walk in terms of his work ethic and his desire to give back and give back in his way. You know, we don't all strive to run for office, or we don't all, you know, necessarily go out and hold picket signs, or we don't all necessarily, you know, we all have our ways because we are all so different. Our unique ways that we can touch someone else and can give back. It might be behind the scenes, silently. His way was in front of the scenes. But faith, family, hard work, and giving back. that's what his life was all about. And that's what the film definitely shows.
Dr. Melanie Gallo, thank you so much for talking about
Thank
your dad,
you.
Herman Cain.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Talking about what you are doing, and thanks for being on the Exploration Films podcast.
Thank you so much.
We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. 2 Corinthians 4, 8 through 9.
Do Lord, remember me. Please, sir, do Lord, remember.
Barry Tolli, thanks for being on the Exploration Films podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Steve. I'm really glad to be here, buddy. Appreciate it.
So I loved your film, From Poor to CEO, the Herman Cain story. And dude, it was so good to see him again, because I watched it after he had passed away. And we were talking before this recording that I didn't really know who Herman Cain was until he had declared for president. And in which case I was like, okay, who is this guy? And the more that I watched him, the more that I just really liked him as a human being, and thought he was just this joy-filled personality, which was so different than any other politician that I've ever seen. How did you get to know him?
Right. Well, your observations are absolutely spot on, Steve. He's an amazing man, but I was fortunate enough to be doing an interview. I was miking him up for the audio. And like you said, he was just an amazing human being that loved people and loved communicating and sending messages with people, and an unbelievable ability to connect in a short amount of time. So I'm just sitting there miking him up, and he, what's your name? Oh, Barry. And then just starts cracking jokes and having a great time, but being a really genuine human being. So all of your observations truly are spot on, and just an incredible man that I'm so thankful that I got to meet and spend so much time with and really get to know and love. I was just so incredibly blown away as we were going through, making the project, how genuine this person was. And that really showed through his politics. Like you said, that he came across like a genuine human being because he was. That's the way that he approached everything. And he just loved everybody. And I really appreciate your comments on the movie. And one thing that we really set out to do was make sure that it was like spending an hour and 10 minutes with Herman. And I believe we captured him. So thank you, bud.
So where did the idea for this film come from? How did your relationship go from you just miking him up on an interview to, and hey, by the way, what if we did a story about you?
Yeah. That's a great question. So we've got more and more time together. So after that first interview, we're on a first name basis. And then the next time that I had the opportunity to be around him, just got to spend more time with him, actually went to a dinner with him and was next to him. And he just was so interesting to me. And the more that I found out about his life, I was just blown away. But what was even cooler than that was he was so genuinely interested in my life or anybody that he met, for a split second. So I was just fascinated by this man and his success. And then I found out that he had been, raised in the segregated South, came up earning his way. At one point, he was flipping burgers at Burger King, and then worked his way to a VP at Burger King, and then Godfathers, owning Godfathers, the CEO of Godfathers. And then, like you said, after his presidential run, when he got so much attention, that's when radio took off and TV appearances, and everybody that knows or that knew Herman wanted to be around him, and you wanted more Herman. I guarantee you that.
So that was one of the fascinating things that I didn't realize about Herman was when he went to Burger King, he left a really well-paying job.
Right.
And went entry level without any promises.
Right.
This was just all with the idea of just working his way up through the ranks.
Right.
But
and that's
crazy.
That can be an easy decision.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. That's not an easy decision at any point in your life, but he wanted to make that sacrifice. He wanted to take that chance because Herman never settled for anything. And that's everything was first class with Herman. When you went anywhere with him, he was first class all the way and taking care of everybody around him. Big tips for everybody, just wanting to make everybody's day better, honestly wanting to make their life better, and just truly incredible.
So to say that my career has been unusual is true. But that's why I don't hang on to the past. And that's why I encourage young people, black, white, any color. Don't hang on to the past. Learn and value those ideals that made us great, and you can become great too.
So what was it like filming with him?
Oh, a blast. We were traveling around because it was we really shot the principal photography over the course of a month, where we had 4 different public speaking appearances. So it gave me a really great opportunity to get all of this footage of him speaking about his life and his perspective and the way in which he wanted people to see him and know his part of the story coming from him, not from the newspaper, an article, or hearsay about this, that, and the other, or what people think they know about him, truly from him. So with that, though, we got to travel together. As we're traveling together, again, we're really getting to know each other. Quite honestly, that year and a half with Herman was just one of the most special times of my life, and I'm forever thankful for it.
What's an enduring memory that you're going to take away from Herman Cain, who he was as a person?
Yeah, one memory that is really tough because every time I was with him was so much fun. I would say, well, I hate to do this to you, Steve, but it'd probably be like an amalgam of him coming in contact with every stranger. I got one. We're getting off the airport at LAX and TMZ was ambushing him. It was at the time when Greta Thunberg had just had a speech or something. And the way in which they were attacking, getting at Herman, wanting to get, that buzz clip type comment about a 15-year-old girl, and Herman wouldn't do it. He's just like, I'm not talking about that right now. But he handled it with such grace, and he gave that man the time of day. And quite frankly, I was surprised and a little annoyed that this guy was attacking my friend, but Herman was such a great person and such a professional that he handled it with grace. And again, wouldn't take that gotcha question though. And that's an example of, him handling a sticky situation really well, and because people were constantly trying to get at him, unfortunately. It was really frustrating as his friend, but he just handled everything so well and was constantly the life of every single room. Talk about, just a glowing light and a beam of energy. That's my friend Herman Cain.
So as an outsider / someone not within the family, what kind of family man did you observe him to be?
Oh, extremely loving husband and father, and grandfather, I should say, because anytime he talked about his wife, his kids, his grandkids, he would just light up. And no matter what was going on, he always took the time to make sure he was spending that time with the family. And his constant thoughts were with his family, and he would do anything, absolutely anything for his family. But he was constantly also there all the time. I love the fact, he worked very closely with Melanie, his daughter, for years. Them getting to work together, I think they just had this incredible bond, this special, special bond. And I love talking to Mel because she reminds me of her dad in so many ways. She's just beautiful girl and beautiful smile, always wanting to laugh. And yeah, she's a lot like her dad. And her mom too, though. Gloria is very special as well. So I got to make sure I cover that. But she reminds me of her dad.
We have family dinners probably twice a month. My wife loves to host these family dinners. And so my 47-year-old daughter and her 2 kids and her husband, my 41-year-old son and his 2 boys and his wife, with my wife and myself, we all sit around the same table and have dinner.
With Herman passing away last year from COVID, how do you feel about this film now?
Extremely proud, extremely proud. Like I said earlier, I alluded to the fact that I wanted to make sure that his fans and people that didn't get to know him really got to spend that time with him, really got to know the man. And like I said, not taking a newspaper article or something off the internet or the radio or the TV, but truly getting to spend time with this man and know what he was truly about and get to see it for themselves. So I believe we did that. So I'm extremely proud about that. I haven't watched it since he passed, to be honest with you, because I had completed it. So I turned it in. I had to, take care of the technical side of things like that, but I couldn't watch the whole thing through. And it does obviously bring up a lot of great memories, but at the same time, I put the last shot of the movie as a aerial shot. It's actually after the credits, but he rises up and Herman's waving goodbye. And I don't think it's a mistake that it worked out that way. And he's lifting off. It's very powerful for me. Yeah. But I'm proud of the film. I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity, and I want people to truly see Herman Cain for who he is.
Any insights or stories that didn't make this film?
Yeah, there was a good one. We were at the airport, and there was a woman, because they're constantly, wherever you are, people are Herman. They just want to take photos with him and talk to him, So that was par for the course. But one woman comes up and she goes, "Hey, I need you to talk to my sister. She's picking me up here at the airport. I'm really conservative and she's really liberal. So can you just talk to her for a split second? Show her how nice you are." So Herman did. And he had, it was funny. He had these little things he'd hand out to people that were just curious. They were called truth cards. Truth cards. One side was what, the media puts out there. And then one side was the truth, right? About certain, political aspects. And so her friend walks up, and again, we had a few-minute conversation with this woman who first approached and was really sweet. She took her picture and just said, "Yeah, can you 1 second?" And then her sister comes up and she sees Herman, and then ghosts up, and Herman's like, "Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Nice to meet you." And she backed up like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And her sister's like, "No, he's really nice. Da, 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 da." And he's like, "Hey, let me give you this card, And she's like, "No, I won't take it. I won't take it." That was just truly eye-opening to me that, somebody who is obviously so warm, and as soon as you saw him, you knew he's somebody you actually want to talk to. But she had such preconceived notions that she wouldn't even meet the man that was in front of her. So that was something that I wanted to put that in the movie, but I couldn't, obviously with the circumstances. She wasn't really excited, but I was filming and I have the footage, but I didn't want to use it just because I didn't want to embarrass her but I wanted to show the fact that there's this side of, society that thinks they have their mind made up on a human being, and they really have no clue about that human being.
How much do you think we need that as a society, for both sides, for conservatives with liberals and liberals with conservatives, and within the evangelical body, outside the evangelical body, and just Christian faith, whatever else faith? Are we missing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm only seeing more division. Yeah, and it blows me away that people continuously on both sides, whereas they talk out of both sides of their mouths, whereas the 1 minute, because it helps them in their agenda, they'll have one stance, and then they're going to flip to the other side and then yell at the other side for being the new side, and to me, and it goes both ways. Absolutely. I think the first thing that's the worst is just the access to dishonest media. Obviously cable TV changed things, but you talk about social media, all the access that we have to we're constantly inundated with this information that is completely biased in one direction or the other, where what happened to straight up news, these are the facts, and I don't see that getting better. But Herman would meet any liberal. I was in rooms with Herman where we had a great meeting with a woman. She was Indian, but she was liberal, Indian, and then I can't remember, but she was a different faith. I'll put it that way. Okay. And they had, but we're in that room, and Herman gave her so much respect and never once came from a judgmental and I was, again, they have differences, but we're meeting about something else. And Herman completely, we talk about this, and Herman, ha, 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 and then moves on, and really was just that way with everybody. I swear he was.
But it really goes back to 1999 when my first grandchild was born. And I looked in her face, and the first thought that went through my mind was, what do I do to make this a better nation and a better world?
So no film project ever is flawless in the execution. What kind of roadblocks, stumbling blocks did you hit in making this thing?
Sound. Sound.
Really?
Similar to, we had sound issues earlier. Yeah, sound is always my Achilles heel. That was something as we were on the go the whole time. There was times where we lost sound, we lost great stuff because of sound issues. Other than that, I don't think so. If I could have used a couple more higher end cameras, that would be something that I would choose. But any storyteller will tell you it's about the story and communicating in that way visually. Sometimes things, especially nowadays when the iPhone can take these beautiful shots, we become a little numb to certain things. But yeah, those little things, but you could always, like you said, there's no filmmaker has ever felt like they put together, something absolutely perfect. You have to finish it and you got to be done. And for me, it was about making sure I was able to tell the story.
I have a friend who has been writing a book, his third book, but this one he just refuses to finish because he just wants to get it perfect.
Right.
So perfect.
Right.
And it's been 15 plus years that he's been working on this thing.
Yeah. Eventually it's got to be done.
So how involved was Herman with this film process?
Very involved from a business standpoint and just from being obviously the star of the show, and we're telling his story. So he was constantly involved, very involved. He's obviously a very great businessman and had incredible instincts that way. So he was, we talked 5-10 times. Constantly talking and going back and forth with the different cuts. I don't know how many different versions we went through, but that's very normal. And then in some of the decisions with some of the things that we had to be honest about that weren't like the fluffy stuff, with the accusations during the presidential election and all that stuff. So there was times when he had to, make those decisions, and he did, and he didn't want to be, he didn't want to sugarcoat it. He didn't want to be putting stuff out there that, wasn't completely accurate. So, and he made sure that was the perfect source. And his family was very active as well. So they helped out a ton. And as you can see in the movie, we have dinner at his house, a Sunday dinner. And I thought that was really important to capture. And that, I think it really captured that night. The Glory made some amazing food.
It looked really good.
I think so too. Thanks.
So what do you want the biggest takeaway of this film to be?
The biggest takeaway of the film would be that Herman was an incredible human being, a very talented human being, a man of faith. First and foremost, his faith was always first and foremost. You can see when he's dealing with, cancer and overcoming things, that he always relied on his faith. So I would say that people don't always know that stuff about him, and they think they know the political side. So I would just want them to really, be able to take away that this is a man of faith and a strong, strong family man that was a ton of fun.
Dr. Mays used to remind us, life is just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon you, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't use it, but it's up to you to use it. You must suffer if you lose it, give an account if you abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but your dreams are in it. Thank you all very much.
So what has Exploration Films done for the distribution of this film, and how has it helped you?
Well, quite honestly, they've had some hangups. We're still waiting on some different outlets to be able to open up, and I've enjoyed all my contact with them. I enjoyed that process, that side of things, but I believe they had some hangups, and now we're working to deliver it to the different outlets.
So what else are you working on? What other projects do you have in the queue?
Yeah, well, I've got a little documentary that I've been working on for many years. It's called JUCO. A story about a group of individuals that have all unique circumstances and why they end up at this unique level, and the kind of craziness that goes on there.
And for people that don't know what JUCO stands for, it stands for junior college.
That's right. Sorry. Yes. It's short for junior college. And that's, a story that's very close to me. I think it's a story of a bunch of unique people doing exceptional things. And then what that looks like 20 years later is we're much older now. And I'm looking forward to at some point finishing that up, but it's been years in the works. And some of the names of people that you said are around that, like one of the coaches. Oh yeah. Well, we had, again, one of the unique characters. Isaiah Mustafa, he ended up becoming the Old Spice guy. We had NFL guys. I fortunately was able to work in the industry and have some decent spots. We have guys that had formerly played in the NFL whose 3 kids all played professional sports, 2 in the NFL. One of them was just did you see that? You watch? Oh yeah, of course. You see the play in the NFL where the referee hip checked the NFL player a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
Did you see that? And they threw the flag. Well, that kid is in my movie. He was a 10-year-old. His daddy, Curtis Marsh, played in the NFL, and then Cassius is there now, and his brother played in the NFL. So there's just all those. There's just a ton of that. One became an MMA fighter. He's a professional MMA fighter to this day. But it was the weird, unique level and opportunity of junior college that all these funny characters and all these funny stories kind of come together to provide an opportunity. And yeah, a lot of us took advantage of it. We had a great time.
Barry Tolli, thanks for being on the Exploration Films podcast. How do people follow you?
Yes, at Barry Tolli on all social media. So BarryTolli. Appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Barry Tolli, thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, Steve. Great talking with you, brother.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Exploration Films podcast. To check out this film, you can go to our new streaming service, exploreflix.world. Exploration Films has been a pioneer and leader in the faith and family film space, and that's why we're so excited to tell you we finally launched our own streaming service, exploreflix.world. If you or your family are looking for amazing films, compelling documentaries, unique stories, concerts, and Christian growth resources that all support your Christian worldview, then check out exploreflix.world and get 7 days free. All the films we talk about on this podcast and many, many more are available there. You can find a link at our website, explorationfilms.com, or you can go directly to exploreflix.world. For the entire Exploration Films team, I'm Steve Ryder. Thank you for investing your time with us.
That's a wrap.